Good morning, guys. Nice to see ya. I've been watching some of my videos. Incidentally, actually, I didn't go deliberately do it, and I noticed I had to do this little smile pause and then start talking. So I'm gonna see if I can change that. Okay. Good morning, guys. Good morning. If you don't know me, if you're new to me, I'm Marshall Burtcher, and I help codependents rediscover happiness after codependency, after love addiction, even after emotionally unavailable relationships, because that's a factor I'm going to be exploring going into July, about how codependency shows up in these other kinds of dynamics, not just with narcissistic abuse. Although my brilliance is in helping those who've been through the seduction abuse discard cycle that is the narcissistic abuse cycle. Well, that was my life for 20-something years. So yeah. All right, so today we're going to be talking about another fantasy, and that's called their potential. Before we do that, I need to share this out to the community. The community is your safe haven where you can get additional guidance, you can get support, you can get connection, you can get access to opportunities to work with me, and to join my trainings, courses, and sometimes even one-on-one work. So you can join me. The community is free. It's there. It's your safe haven from the storm and confusion and chaos that is narcissistic abuse and neglect. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Guys, I appreciate you because, one, you've been subscribing to, you've been sharing the videos. 3, I've been getting feedback privately from you and publicly about the impact of my work on your lives, and that's really what it's about for me, because it was a very scary time when I started to discover these things, and there wasn't a whole lot of resources or understanding that really worked. And so I figured it out, and I take ownership of that because I put a lot of work and time into understanding what was really going on, and then I found the way through, and I'm just happy to share it with you because you don't have to go through the hell that was my journey. It can make it a lot simpler. We all do have to go through that hell to some degree, but we can get through it faster when we know what the real cause is and we have the right tools that address that cause in the right way. Freedom. All right, so let me get this shared out to the community here. All right, there we are. So if the share button will work, we'll have some exciting things happen. Boom. Okay. So let's talk about this fantasy. So call it their potential equals your fantasy. So in codependency, one of the big hooks that keeps us stuck is potential. We fall in love with potential. We fall in love with the idea of who they could be. That's how we phrase it. In reality, we're actually saying, I'm falling in love with who I think you should be. I know that can be blunt. I know that can smart a little bit, but that's reality. We have no business determining who someone else should be. We have no business determining what they could be. Our job, and then this is it, is to accept people as they show up. Hi, Michelle. Nice to see you. I'm just right to it. Our job is to accept people as they are and to acknowledge that what they are, not to acknowledge what they could be, not to acknowledge that, hey, you're being abusive because of your trauma, so let's fix your trauma and you'll be this other different person. No. Your job is to go, wow, I'm being abused. This needs to either, depends on your tolerance level for abuse. For me, I'm being abused. I'm out. I'm done. Zero tolerance policy with abuse. And the reason why is because abuse comes from what's called entitled thinking. Entitled thinking means I have the right to do what I want to you without repercussion. I deserve to treat you the way I treat you because of my own state of being, my own state of affairs. It should be very scary. It's one of the very few shoulds I put out there, but that's an extremely scary framework of thinking, because the person has no consideration for your well-being. It's a result of a severe deficit of empathy, right? And this is important to confront inside yourself, to be real deliberate with this, because potential suggests that the person isn't really what they are. And it also suggests that we can change them. If we change enough, they'll change. It's one of the biggest codependent strategies out there is, if I change the way I show up and the way I do things, they'll change. If someone changes their behavior in response to the way you're responding, you need to slow down and look at that very seriously, because now they are reactive to your stance rather than responsive. And then how can you have a safe, healthy relationship with someone if you have to act a specific way to get a specific result from them? It's not like codependents are out there abusing these other individuals. We're generally not doing that. Generally, not generally. But if we do have toxic behavior and we are hurting or harming someone, then yeah, we need to take ownership of that. And it would be reasonable to expect a change in behavior on their part. But generally, the rule of thumb I follow is, if I'm showing up with my integrity, if I'm showing up with honesty and with kindness and with a healthy, direct, clear, and simple confrontation of problems and concerns, and the other person's getting blame, they're blame shifting it onto me, they're being verbally or emotionally or sometimes physically violent, I'm done. It's over. So when it comes to potential, when it comes to this fantasy, we have to be really sober with ourselves. We do not know who this person would even be if they changed. We don't even know if we'd still be, we don't even know if we'd be compatible. I mean, I grew a lot in the last 10 years, and that moved me out of relationships because I wasn't compatible with the relationship anymore. And I got healthier. And I moved further out of the relationship. So there's no guarantee that them changing will equal the fantasy you think will result. Okay? So their potential is not something you have any business determining. Your job is to define what is healthy for you, what brings you happiness rather. I got two thoughts confused there. And what matters to you and how you want to feel on a regular and consistent basis in a relationship. And then determine, then look at the relationship you're in and ask the question, does this align? That's it. Because potential isn't something that's real. It in itself is a fantasy. I have lots of potential in my brain. And yet, here I am, not in that potential. Because it takes effort, and it takes action, and it takes change to translate potential into reality. And that's not a thing a lot of people will do. It's a thing that a lot of people will resist doing, and they will not persist long enough to get that potential into a form, into an actual reality that they experience. And so, for your sanity, and for your well-being, for your long-term happiness, we need to confront the idea that falling in love with potential is one of the most dangerous things we do as codependents, because that leads us into that fantasy land of, but it'll be this way and they'll be like this. We have no idea what they'll be like. What's more healthy and more effective for your happiness is to acknowledge reality and see how it aligns with your standards, with what works for you, and get choosy there. When it comes to relationships, you should be extreme, and I should. Maybe I'll add that to one of the shoulds. I highly recommend you be very choosy. Because the more choosy you are, the more high quality and more fulfilling those relationships will be. We ought to go for quality and not quantity. And we ought to become tolerant of loneliness and of aloneness. That's the power, that the toleration of loneliness and aloneness gives us the ability to choose. It gives us the ability to be free. Now, in the upcoming From Addiction to Connection course that starts here in 11 days, we go deep into how we regulate loneliness, because loneliness is a mild form of attachment distress. And we can begin to connect into that loneliness and resolve it both internally and externally with healthy friendships, healthy bonds that help us succeed and thrive, so that we can then be more choosy about the romantic and intimate relationships we bring into our lives. The more choosy we are, the happier we will be. And that means dealing with reality and not with potential. So how do you know if you're dealing with potential in your thinking? Well, you're asking what if questions. Well, what if it was like this? What if they changed? You're making statements like, well, I know who they could be. I know what they could do. I can see who they really are. No, you can't. No, you don't. You're seeing what you think they could be and what you think they really are. But you're not seeing who they really are because you're not acknowledging reality. Okay? We have to be pretty. That this is one of those pokey parts in healing where I need to be really, really raw with myself, really confrontational, and say, I might be feeding myself some bullshit here. This needs to change. I need to see them for who they are. And this is sane making. This is a sobriety process of getting connected with it. And this is what we do for like 3 classes from addiction to connection, is really sober up to the hard reality of what's happened and who they are. This is hard stuff. It is also necessary for our liberation from the fantasy, because the fantasy is not your friend. That euphoria is not the truth. I know that this can suck to hear. I know it can hurt. I know for me, it was a gut punch when I started to realize I've been feeding myself a lot of this. I had a huge amount of fantasy about the potential of my parents, for instance. A lot of that fantasy was built on the seduction phase, the love bombing. Because they were that way one day, why can't they be that again? Rather than asking the question, why aren't they consistently that way? See, abuse and discard are not elements in a healthy relationship cycle. Healthy relationship cycles are about attraction and connection, flirtation and play, building a bond, building stability, handling conflict with love and care. Just round and round we go. Very calm, very centering, very loving experience. You're not being abused. You're not being discarded. You're not scared. You feel safe. You feel connected. They're reliable. You're reliable. That kind of stuff. That is the kind of relationship you deserve. It's the kind of relationship you're built for. It's the kind of relationship that leads to happiness. See, we're not here to build undue tolerance for other people's bullshit and their trauma and their lack of taking ownership of it and healing. We don't need to martyr ourselves to rescue others. They need to deal with the conflict they create in their lives, the consequence of their choices, because those are their lessons. Those are their teachers. That's what sets them free. So we get out of the way by acknowledging where this relationship lines up for us and then making choices for our own well-being, our own happiness. Because, guys, the proper order of choosing things in our lives is me and you. Simple as that. Me and you. It's not you and maybe sometimes me. And it's not you, because that's the narcissistic side, or that's the codependent side, and the narcissistic side is me. It's me and you. Simple as that. So when I have to access that awareness in me, I slow down and I'm like, hey, does this align with me? What's really happening here? If something's off, I immediately stop and go, what is off? We need to be vigilant for our own well-being. And that means popping the fantasy, popping the bubble of fantasy, come back to earth and acknowledging what is real. You can acknowledge what's real very, very simply. What are they doing? What are they saying? What is the outcome? What am I doing? What am I saying? What is the outcome? How do I feel? We'll do it this way. How do I feel about what they're doing, saying, and the outcome? What I'm doing, saying, and what the outcome is. That's sanity. That's reality. And you need to get into that practice of acknowledging it. At first, it's a lot of grief and a lot of disappointment. It can be disheartening. It can feel gutting. Shame can show up. We can feel stupid. Like, why didn't I see this before? Well, we didn't see it because we were trying to survive it. We're trying to survive it because that's how we survived. That's all we knew, right? Shame, by the way, is useless. It only points to one thing, and that is where we need love. So if shame is showing up in your world, allow yourself to connect with love instead. And allow compassion to come in. And compassion is going to feel really uncomfortable and undeserved, but that's the point. You don't earn compassion. Compassion is something that you have innate right to, at least from yourself. And so allow yourself to have that. Give yourself permission to have compassion despite the shame or lack of deserving you might feel about that. When we come in contact with reality, at first it's a hard experience. There's a lot of grief and sadness, maybe distrust and confusion. But as we start to trust what we see, what we perceive, and what we feel as legitimate and real, that starts to contract more, and we start to get more in contact with what we feel about how we've been treated, which often is anger, sadness, and resolve. And that's where we start to really make the changes in our lives to extract ourselves from those toxic relationships, build healthy standards and boundaries, and then reconnect or build new connections with new people that are healthy. And that's what we start to do, and that's what I hope you accomplish through the 3 steps of From Addiction to Connection, which is restoring your peace, restoring your sanity, and restoring your connection. Another way to do that third one is also to restore belonging, right? We deserve to belong, to be met and loved for who we are, not what we do. Or not just what we do, because sometimes I'm favored and valued for what I do, and I imagine you are as well, because we are pretty damn brilliant as codependents. So I want you to take time today and this week to confront the fantasy of their potential and acknowledge what's really happening and get honest with yourself, and then ask yourself, what do you need to do in order to break free of this and move towards your happiness? Now, if you find yourself in extreme distress, confusion, you feel lost in how to deal with this, check out From Addiction to Connection. The link is below on Facebook, above on YouTube, and join us. We start here in 11 days, and it's an 8-week course taught live by me on Sundays, 7 p.m. I'm going to lead you through restoring your sanity, restoring belonging and connection, and restoring peace. These 3 simple concepts that the function is actually quite simple. It can feel complex in applying it, so I get that. But the goal, the return on that investment of your time, your energy, your money, your focus is peace, belonging, and sanity, so that you can move forward, because you'll emerge out of that with a foundation to build healthy relationships with. You'll emerge with skill sets that help you regulate your anxiety and your attachment distress, and you'll be prepared to know, love, and live who you are through the happiness strategy, which would be your next step after that. Because that's my goal. That's what I do, guys, is I help you discover your happiness after codependency by helping you heal yourself, know yourself, and then share yourself. So From Addiction to Connection, step 1. Step 2 is the happiness strategy, and step 3 would be the relationship strategy that premieres here in December. Guys, I appreciate you. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. You have questions, you need support, join the community if you need support. If you got questions about joining From Addiction to Connection, either ask in comments below or PM me. I'm more than happy to talk with you and give you guidance in those things. Let's be free together, guys, because you can be happy again, you can be free again. So I'll see you in class, and I'll see you in our next training. Be safe, be healthy out there. Talk with you soon.